talk about that APA practice activity that you all did recently because, first of all, I barely introduced APA to you all. Some of y'all, it was your first time even hearing that word APA. So you all are probably thinking, what is this lady talking about? I don't even understand this writing activity. This is insane. I don't get it. I wanted you to not get it because it was almost just a diagnostic so I could see where everybody is with APA. So if you're familiar with APA, it maybe was just a refresher, but if you're new to it, you've never heard APA, don't worry. This was supposed to kind of make your head hurt a little bit. So I want you to make edits to it just so you can get more and more comfortable with APA format because it's a very strict and particular format. So you either do it right or not. So we're still practicing, but this is a good intro to kind of work through the errors if you made any. And if you made any, it's more than okay, by the way. So you're going to go, when you're making these edits, go back to 5.9 writing activity, APA practice, and you are going to click the workshop handout again. Now, I realized after the fact that I posted this, so make sure you're communicating with me, that if you use Google Docs, this link will not work. So I will have an updated file of the Google Docs option as well that you can copy and paste. I didn't even think of it until after. So keep communicating with me if files don't work. But regardless, whether you're using Google Docs or Microsoft Word, that this is the APA practice. So I want to teach you how to do this, but I'm not going to give you the answers. I'm just going to give you the template. So that's kind of the step 2 that you can kind of practice and see if you get it right. Because APA, again, it's patience, it takes time, and you have to make errors to learn how to correct. So remember that a reference page is a list of all your sources used in a paper at the very end. The reference provides all the information about a source, the title, what type of source it is, the date it was published, where it was published, and all that fun stuff. It depends now on the type of source being used. So these samples that you were practicing, the first one, it was as if you used a book source with 2 authors. The second is a different source. It's a journal article from something called a database. A database is a collection of credible sources that have been peer-reviewed by professionals, and when they get approved, they get put into a database. It's a very credible form of a source. But a journal format for a reference page and a book format for a reference page are very different, so they're not going to look the same. And then the third is a newspaper article without an author, and that can happen as well. So you need to know how to do that because when we get closer and closer to research, you want to be able to correctly format the reference page. And like I said, each source looks very different on the reference page. So let's talk about this first. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Let's talk about this first source that you had to practice. Number 1, it was as if you found a book that had 2 authors. Okay, this is the information about the book. The date it was published, who the publisher was, the place of publication, who these 2 authors are, and the title of the book, and the page that you got the information from. All right, so we're going to complete the reference. And remember, the reference is all of this, but it's got to be formatted a particular way to look like a book reference. And the references always go on the last page of a research paper. So they have all this information on there. Now, let me go over. Now, when you make these corrections, you are going to always refer to Purdue OWL. Only use that website because it's the most credible format for APA. All right, so when you're working on these edits, click the link to Purdue OWL and it'll take you there. Go over there. Now, I'm only going to focus on this first one right now. All right, so we have to remind ourselves what type of source it is. It's a book. So when I go to Purdue OWL, first of all, you want to make sure you're in the APA section because they have MLA, they have Chicago style. We are only using APA in this class, so just be careful with that. So we're in APA. This is basic rules for the reference. This is important to read once you get into writing an actual paper that's using APA. We're not there yet. So I just want to talk about how to format that book reference. So you need to know what type of source you have. Do you have a book? Do you have a page on a website? Do you have a newspaper article, a journal, whatever it is? Because like I said, each one is very, very different. Okay. So let me see. So our first source is, all these ads. Our first source is a book, right? That's what it said on that Word document, book with 2 authors. So now that it's telling you what type of source you have to go to this left-hand side right here, and I can zoom in if this is blurry. And we have to see what type of source we're dealing with. So for that number 1, it's a book. So we need to go reference list books. So click that link. And let me zoom out a little bit. And then going back to this, it's a book with 2 authors. So we need to find that on this page. This is the basic format for books, but we need to see the book with more than 1 author. Okay, so these are all the different types of books out there, but we have just a basic book, it sounds like, with 2 authors. So what we're going to use is this one, the basic format for books, because it's not an edited, but it doesn't say anything on number 1 about an edited book, with different editors and authors, a translation. It's a simple book source. Why? Because it just says book with 2 authors. So we're keeping it simple. So you're going to format that to look like this template right here. So what I'm going to do, what I recommend is when you find this on Purdue OWL is you highlight it, highlight the template. This is the reference template, and then you copy and paste it into that Word document that you're working on. Okay, so I'm going to give you the answer for this one, but for the other 2, what I'm going to do is just give you the template so that when you fix things, we'll see how you do. So this is my template. So I have to fill all this information out into this template. Okay, and this is a hint. This is kind of confusing too when you're learning APA. Is what this means is it's the author's last name that you start with, and then what this A and A are is this is their first name initial, and if they have a middle name, it's their middle name initial. So don't spell out authors' first names. That's not an APA format. So just be careful with that. So let's work on this one together just so you kind of understand it a little bit more. So we need to fill out this template with all this information we have. We have 2 authors, so let's work on the first author first. We need the author last name, so it would be Sykes. So we're going to do Sykes. And then we have his first name, it's Jonathan, so we need to replace this with the letter J because that's his first name. Get rid of the second letter because I don't see a middle name anywhere, so we don't have to worry about that. So we have our author last name, comma, J. Now we have more than 1 author. So let me just make sure I get the punctuation right with this because sometimes I get confused. Okay, so got the period, and then you're going to put a comma, and then you're going to put that little and symbol because we have 2 authors. Sometimes that looks a little weird. Okay, now we're right. All right, now that's hinting to our audience that there's more than 1 author. So who's our second author? All right. So then we're going to spell the last name. Remember, it's always that author last name. Keep that comma, so have it follow exactly how this one looks, comma, and then the first name, Eugene. So E, again, they don't have a middle name, so that's all we need. And keep everything, all these punctuations that they have, punctuation marks, periods, keep that because the template's kind of guiding you with that. And just replace the actual text information. Okay, so we have our author's last name and first initial. All right, the year of publication. What that means is when was the source published. So let's take a look at the information we have here. It was published in 1994. So keep that parentheses. 1994. That's all we need there. Title of work, capital letter also for subtitle. Now this is another tricky part of APA. Only capitalize the first word of a title of a source for the books. And it's telling you, it's hinting that because only the T is capitalized here. This is lowercase and this is lowercase. If it has a subtitle, sometimes books have a subtitle, then you just capitalize that word that's after the colon here. Everything else is also lowercase. Unless there's proper nouns in the title, then keep it capital. You know, United States is capital. always, so you would still do that as well. So what is the title of this book? Here it is right here, book title, Best Practices and Assessment at Community Colleges. So for following APA, we've got to replace this title, keep the period because it keeps everything organized. The title of the book is Best, put a space there, Best Practices and Assessment at Community Colleges. And notice how I'm keeping it, it has an uppercase here, but we can't do that for APA. So you're only uppercase, you're only capitalizing best. Everything else is lowercase. Unless it said, you know, at Doña Ana Community Colleges. Doña Ana is a proper noun. It's the name of the school, so you would keep that capital. So that's our book title. Publisher name. So that is who published this book. So publisher is Pearson Longman. And if you notice, the P is capital, the N is capital because it's a proper noun. It's the name of a publisher. So we would keep that the same. Just be careful not to delete any of the punctuation marks. Okay. DOI, that's usually for an electronic source. This sounds like it's more of just a basic hard copy book, but a DOI is almost like a link. Again, when we get to finding sources, we can discuss that further, but this, if you don't see DOI anywhere here, then it doesn't have one, so just delete it. Okay, so this would be the correct answer for number 1, because we plugged all that information in based on the type of source it was. So now I'm going to pause the video and get ready for the second one. Okay, so the next source that we had is a journal article from a database. A database is electronic, so if you didn't understand what that meant, that's more than okay. We also know it's electronic because I brought up that word earlier, but it has something called a DOI, and I'm going to explain what that means in just a second. But we need to figure out how to format this because the reference for a journal article from a database looks very different than this book reference. So we have to go to APA again, Purdue OWL, and again, always go to this left-hand side. And since I gave you a hint and I told you that its journal articles are from a database are electronic, we want to go right here where it says reference list electronic sources because it's not a print source. So we're going to click that. Especially nowadays, electronic sources are growing and growing. So we need to figure out from this page of electronic sources, we need to find the journal article option. Web page or piece of online content, that's not correct because it doesn't say anything about a journal. So scroll down. Use these headings as a guide. Wikipedia article, nothing about Wikipedia on that Word document. Online scholarly journal article. So that's what we're going to follow. And then it mentions that word DOI. Online materials can change URLs, so that's why they use something called a DOI, but it's very similar. It's how to identify and find the article. So you have 2 options for this one. Article from an online periodical with a DOI assigned or with no DOI assigned. So if you go back to that Word document, it mentions that word DOI. So we would do that first option. Article from an online periodical with DOI assigned. So here's your template. Copy. And this is a sample one to refer to, which is nice. It helps you out. And paste. Let me change the font so we can distinguish the difference. Okay. So I'm not going to do this one on this video. I want you to do it yourself since you have the template now. And how I found that, if you need a quick little refresher, is I went to Purdue OWL, APA. I went to reference list electronic sources. So then I scrolled down and I found online scholarly journal articles citing DOIs, and it's this first one because we had a DOI assigned. This is the template. This is a nice little guide as well. Remember, APA, author last name, first initial only. If they have a middle initial, that's what that M is for. If it's not, get rid of that letter. If there's more than one author, put the comma and then same follow for the second author. Year it was published, title of the article. This is the title of that sample they have here on Purdue OWL. Remember, you're only capitalizing that first word, title, development, unless you have a proper noun. Title of periodical, That just means what it was published on. What was the article? What was this article published on? This one was published on Psychology and Marketing. That one follows normal capitalizations, but notice how it's in that italicized slant font. You need something called the volume number. So you don't need to spell volume, just put the number. This one was 23 for this one. Issue number, again, just remember the punctuation marks. Keep all the punctuation marks as is and fill out the information. But if it kind of hints to you in these templates, if you see that the font is italicized, it's telling you to italicize it. If you see the first word capital and nothing else is, it's hinting to you to do that. Issue number is 2 for this one. And then they have page numbers. So you want to put the page range that the source was from, but you don't need to put P or page or anything, but that's what these numbers are. And then it has a DOI. So if you get confused, it's okay, but practice. Remember, we're just practicing. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, but try it. You have all this information here. You now have the template from this video and from Purdue OWL. Fill this information out according to what it says. And then if you notice, though, when you copy and paste, it gets rid of that italicized. So just be careful with that. There, just make sure to italicize. And this is all the information. Title of the journal that it was published on. That's what it means by periodical. Title of the article, the year. You have that DOI. You have the page range, but don't spell or paste the word page. Just copy it like that and see how you do. Remember, we're just practicing, but don't skip it. All right, let's go to that last one. All right, so the last source, the last reference on this practice is number 3, newspaper article without an author. So that one is tricky. We're going to think about that one. I have to refresh my memory on that. And APA, by the way, gets updated a lot. So this is issue, I think it's APA 7 now that they're going with. They update a lot, so I have to keep up with the times as well. A newspaper article without an author. It doesn't say anything about it being electronic. It has the URL, but it also has the page number. So when you're working on your actual sources, you would need to distinguish what type it is. But usually now, especially because times are changing, they're usually electronic. But I'm going to show you the template. We're going to do the template for hard copy print sources, just because it doesn't say anything about it being electronic here. So we need to figure out how to format this for the reference. So again, we got to go to that left-hand side, and then we're going to go, it's not electronic. We're going to assume it's a print newspaper. So it's not a book, because a newspaper and a book are very different, right? So reference list, other print sources. We're going to click that and see if we find anything about that word. We're going to look for that word newspaper. So it's not a dictionary. It's not an encyclopedia. It's not a group author. So we got to keep scrolling. It's not this. It's nothing related to this. We don't see that word newspaper here, so we got to keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. 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 Just look for that word newspaper, which I'm not finding. I think I'm in the wrong place. See, I went in the wrong place. So we didn't find that word newspaper anywhere. So we're going to go here. Articles in periodicals, because that sounds like it might be newspaper related. So click that. Let's look for that word newspaper. Print journal, it sounds like we're almost there. Electronic journal, article in a magazine, article in a newspaper. We got it. So this would be the format, the template. It doesn't really hint to you what it is. So let's go back up. Okay, so we have to kind of be creative with this one. So this would be the template, but we don't have an author. This one's a little tricky. All right. Make this look like that. Okay. Okay, so this is still the same format. I'm going to change this though. Author, last name, first initial. I'm just going to put the F, first initial. A little different with newspapers. You need the year and the month. So that's a little different. So I'm going to change this just to the basic template so I can follow along. Title of the newspaper article. So we'll do it. And notice APA, only that first word's capital. Title of newspaper article. And this is what it was published on. What newspaper publication? Title of newspaper publication. The title of the newspaper publication follows normal capitalizations because usually it's a city title or it's just a proper noun in general because it's the name of a newspaper. So this one would be for here it would be San Francisco Chronicle. And then what these are is just the pages that they're on. So if you see that A5, that's what would go here. So I'm actually just going to give you that one right here. A5, that's all you would put. This would be the normal format. We don't have an author. So I'm going to figure out what to do because I forgot with newspapers. I know what to do with books, but I don't know what to do with authors without what's it called? Newspapers. I'm going to see if it's a little different. Like I said, APA changes so much that I forget as well. When the work does not have an author, move the title of the work to the beginning and follow with the date. Okay. That's what I thought, and I'm not just lying. I figured it was that. Title. Okay. If you ever need help with that stuff, I went to reference list, author, authors. That's a general kind of rule with different ones. And let me just make sure. Okay. Move the title of the work. Okay. So what you would do, y'all, is when you fill this template out for number 3, move the newspaper article to the beginning. So I'll just give you the template like that. You're welcome. Just kidding. APA is, I learn new rules each time they change. So don't worry if this is giving you a headache. It's just practice. We're just practicing. Okay. Title of newspaper. Does that look right? I don't know why that looks weird. Title of newspaper. It said to follow with the year, right? Follow with the date. Okay, exactly. All right, so there's your template. Fill it out according to this information here. We were able to make quick adjustments. All right, now let's talk about these in-text citations. These, in my opinion, are a little easier just because it's the actual information in the text. So remember that the reference, this part 1 is what goes at the very end of a paper. It's all that source information, because if you had all this in your essay, that would be annoying. It would look kind of bulky. It would look odd. It doesn't allow the flow of the writing to continue. But you got to give credit, right, when you use a source in your actual paper. So that's what that's what the in-text citations are. The in-text citations should only tell us the authors, the year, and the page only if it's a direct quote, because with direct quotes you can find the sentence on the page. It's a paraphrase. You might be paraphrasing a whole page, so it doesn't matter. And let's talk about that. All right, so these are using the same sources that 1, 2, and 3 have, just to get you to practice. So if this was your paper, you're in the middle of the paragraph, you're typing, and you use their source, this book, you quote something from this book. Now I know it's a quote because it has those quotation marks. And remember, direct quotes, it's a sentence, no more than a sentence. A direct quote shouldn't be longer than 2 lines. I know it's a direct quote from the book because they have the little quotation marks. So this is one way to format it. And remember, this is see y'all, I'm forgetting too. I've been teaching APA for so long and I've already been forgetting the difference between the terminology. Let me see. Hold on. In text. What is that word? Help me out. I'm asking you all in the future to help me out when you watch this. Narrative. That's the word. It's a narrative citation if it starts the sentence. If your source starts the sentence like it does here, it's a narrative citation. Okay, so we have the author. You only need the author last names for the in-text citations. So what do you think goes here? We need the year. So go back to 1, scroll up to number 1, put that year in this parentheses. Keep the parentheses. Remember, always keep the punctuations. Have suggested that quote. It's a direct quote. So we also have to put the page number here. So you put P. scroll up and find the page number for number 1 on this Word document. All right. Number 2 is a parenthetical citation. It goes at the end of a sentence. You can do either way. You can do both, but it's just different ways so you learn. There's no direct quotes here, so we don't need page number, but we still have to, it's a paraphrase, but we still have to give credit to the source. This is from source number 2, the journal article from a database. So we need the author last name and the year. Author last name, comma, year for that one. And there was an author, right? Yeah, okay. Author last name, year in this parentheses. Don't delete the parentheses. And then we see a quote here. So we need a page number. We don't have an author for that one. So what do you think we do? I'll give you the answer to this one. Remember, there's different rules, and it's tricky. But once you learn, once you practice, it gets better. So if you don't have an author, what you do, because the standard in-text citation is author, last name, year, and then since this is a direct quote, it's also the page. We don't have an author. It's not the end of the world. We don't have to give up and find a new source. It's more than okay. San Francisco Chronicle's credible, so it's fine. You don't have an author, replace that part with the title of the article. But keep those little quotation marks. So the title of this San Francisco article is on number 3 up here. So scroll up, the year, and the page. Okay? There's different rules if there's not years, by the way. If this didn't have a year, you would put N.D. Don't even worry about that yet. None of these sources have that. So I just want you to get comfortable first with the basics. And then we need the page number for this one since it's a direct quote. Okay, so make your edits. Feel free to set up an appointment with me or just stop by office hours and we can work on this together and get it over with. But it's trial and error. APA is trial and error. I made errors right now. I had to double check terminology. So it gets updated so much that it's okay to make mistakes. We're learning. I want you to be kind of frustrated with it. That's the goal. You can try these citation machines. Personally, I don't like them because sometimes they're incorrect, sometimes they're not, they're outdated. So you can do the citation machine and then check on PurdueOwl, but just be careful because, you know, it may not be correct. So this is kind of step 2, make your edits. I'll see how you do, and then we probably do a step 3 just to double check.